Everyone can benefit from the principles of recovery. Bryan Hedin joins us from the Renaissance Ranch to share his recovery story and the work they are doing at the ranch. He talks about the challenges of the Jekyll and Hyde lifestyle, the language of recovery, the shame of inauthenticity and not measuring up, and being a people pleaser. Enjoy. Welcome to the Illuminate Recovery podcast. We shed light on mental health issues, mental illness, and addiction recovery. Ways to cope, manage, and inspire. Beyond the self-care we will discuss, you may need the help of a licensed professional. My name's Kurt Nider. I'm a husband, father, entrepreneur, a handyman, and a student of life. I avoid conflict, I deflect with humor, and I'm fascinated by the human experience.
And I'm Shelley Mangum. I am a clinical mental health counselor, and my favorite role of all times is grandma. I am a seeker of truth, and I feel like life should be approached with tremendous curiosity.
I ask the dumb questions.
I fill in the gaps.
All right, we are super thrilled today to have Bryan Hedin with us. He is the executive director at Renaissance Ranch Treatment Centers, and he's been in this industry a long time. Bryan, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Privileged to be here.
It's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to hear people's stories and to connect in this COVID world, even if it is over video conference.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be fun.
So maybe give our listeners a little bit of background, kind of where you come from and how you ended up where you're at right now.
Okay. I'm a Utah boy. I was born in Logan, up north. My parents are both from Cache Valley. I love Cache Valley. I was born into a really good family. My story is not full of I'll just say that I was born into a phenomenal family, both immediate, 4 siblings, 3 brothers, and the youngest is a sister. Grew an extended family as well. I mean, I got to include them, grandparents, aunts, uncles, dozens of cousins on both sides. I was one of the older cousins. Born into a pretty structured religious family, LDS. So that was part of life growing up. Was definitely it was just kind of the standard, and I didn't know any different. And I think it's a good way to grow up. I in a lot of ways, I think it's complex, but it can be complex, but the standards and values and structure and suggestions, right, I think are all come from a good place and still do. Grew up playing sports, baseball mostly, soccer, swimming, basketball, football, Cub Scouts, Scout Camp, having fun with your buddies. Really just there's nothing in my childhood that would on the surface scream out, this guy's going to get into heroin when he's older, high school, junior high school dances. I mean, tons of friends, really good social life. I did always kind of have this, and I didn't really know at the time what it was, but just kind of this underlying apprehension or fear of not being enough or not achieving enough or not checking all the boxes or just not being good enough. I always felt like I kind of fell short, and that was in the midst of, if my kids were to do some of the things that I was doing as far as accomplishments in sports or school. I mean, I was a good enough student. I was decent at sports, but I always, even so, felt like I just wasn't doing good enough. My standards for myself, my expectations for myself were very high. and that didn't really come from, like, my father wasn't a driver, you know. He didn't really push me and put a lot of pressure on me. My mom didn't put a lot of pressure on me. It was kind of from myself. Um, you know, it was kind of, if I went 3 for 4 in a baseball game, which is very good, I would be bummed that I didn't go 4 for 4. You know, and if I, you know, if I was playing golf and I bogeyed the last hole, that was what would stick with me rather than how I played the previous 17, which was pretty good. You know, things like that. I would always focus on, well, gosh, man, if you could just be a little bit better. If you could be a little bit taller, a little bit stronger, you know, a little bit faster, like, your life would be okay. So you know, life was, my childhood was great, and I'm kind of a silver spooned, spoiled, like, people bailed me out a lot. That's part of my story. I wasn't, you know, running the streets of Farmington, Utah. You know, when people ask me where I grew up, I say, you know, it was really hard. We had to, like, remember the code to the pool, and sometimes you forgot it, and you'd have to figure out what the new code was to get into the swimming pool, you know. And I joke about that because it's funny. It's like, at the time I didn't know how privileged I was, you know. And you just kind of don't see that until you keep living life. I got into substances 13, 14, started experimenting, doing weird stuff. I mean, I was rolling up like pine needles and leaves in party blowers and smoking with my friends as cigars, you know, just kind of behaving, just kind of acting out, you know, and always really curious. You know, I think I've always been just a very curious kind of daydreamer. And so I think some of that comes from that. I do also have alcoholism through extended family and immediate family. I mean, 2 of my brothers have been to treatment. My father's been to treatment. And so there's definitely there's a current underneath all of this. There's definitely some mental health stuff going on. But it kind of similar to a lot of other stories. I started experimenting, and there's a couple things that happened because of that. It was I was going against values that I had grown up with, which was, we don't do that. And part of that was pressure. But yeah, we don't do that. So some of that was just what I was being told, but some of that was personal to me. Like, I believed that too. I did have experiences growing up that were genuine with my higher power. So I started having this conflict, this kind of Jekyll and Hyde. I want to be a man of God, but I also kind of like to make my own cigars. As a 14-year-old, not a lot of room in between those two guys. So that double life thing that I started doing, because I didn't know how to be honest about it. It was terrifying to be vulnerable and transparent with, parents or mentors or friends' parents, or just kind of your little community. It's like, I'm never telling them that side of things. I'm going to drink some vodka and get sick and party on the weekend and then, go to church and bless sacrament and play that part too. And I think that shit causes so much internal conflict, I mean, and again, I didn't know it at the time. I was just kind of getting used to carrying around massive amounts of shame and getting kind of jaded with how much shame you're carrying around. And gosh, that's such a tricky way to live.
Well, and when you don't have any frame of reference, right? You have no idea that's what's happening. You're just doing the best you know how to do, and curiosity definitely gets us to a lot of interesting places. So without being taught or modeled some of those behaviors, how in the world would anyone know that that's where they're
Right.
at?
Well, yeah, that's a foreign language. I think we're coming a long way today as far as mental health and those languages and how we speak them. And there's so much information out there that's fantastic. And but gosh, back then, as a 17, 18-year-old high school kid, that was taught, if you do certain things, like, you're going to be in trouble with God. And so I always felt like I was in trouble. I always felt like I couldn't talk to my higher power, or that I had sinned my way out of his, like, club. It's like I can't get back into the club until I become the person that I feel like I can be. But so I was always like, you know what, I'm not gonna try to pray. I'm not going to, do those things, because why would he listen to me? I'm a sinner. I have failed in that regard. Until I can be good enough again, then maybe I'll start kind of going down that road again. But so very tough, kind of really complex. I still through living like that tried to check boxes. I did a couple relocations as the substance abuse got heavier and more consistent into OxyContin and opiates and daily marijuana and lots of acid and lots of psychedelics, mushrooms, acid. I was still interviewing to go on a mission. I was still like doing that, and I think it was from a place of good intentions. I really wanted to. I thought in two parts, like it would help me clean up. I wanted to clean up. I didn't like living a daily kind of altered, crazy life. I mean, there was snapshots where it was fun and you had some camaraderie and some strange outside the box way of living that I wasn't used to. But then I would come back to, like, I'm going to go on a mission, so I would try to go. I went on a mission for 2 days and got to, I call it the MTC West mission. And was totally unprepared. I mean, you're a kid, and I started withdrawing in the MTC. Nobody knows what's going on. I'm coming off of OxyContin.
No.
Like the morning that I went in, and because that's just was my life, part of it, and was not ready for withdrawing in the MTC on a mission. So after 48 hours, I took off. Didn't jump the fence or anything, but took off. Went home with intentions of, in 6 months, they kind of told me you can go back and you should go back. And I was like, yeah, I'll definitely do that and get cleaned up and go back. And again, a night later, I was up in a cabin, dropping acid, like dancing around the campfire, just totally just living that double life. I couldn't escape it. And I think it's important to mention, people close to me in my life at that time, parents, girlfriend, even some friends, didn't know what was going on. They liked the check the boxes, Bry. They didn't know about the other guy. And so because of that, the level of dishonesty, the level of, and you get jaded to that too. You get used to being dishonest and to lying to people that love you the most, and start to form these weird kind of resentments to shut people out, because you don't know how to own stuff on your own or have that self-awareness. Like, I'm being extremely dishonest. It's really easy. It's a lot easier to say it's, if they don't love me, then I'm going to shut them out of my life. If they don't support all of me, I'm going to shut them out of my life. And the truth is, like, I'm extremely dishonest. And, so that is kind of how I lived until I finally found treatment when I was 27 in 2008. And so that's kind of how I lived from early 20s until I was 27. And it was carrying around this, I'm an addict, there's no doubt about it. I'm an alcoholic, there's no doubt about it. I want to stop. I need to stop. I many times pleading with God, like, if you help me stop, I'll do this and this, kind of bargaining with God, and over the toilet bowl, or out in the desert one time, with alcohol poisoning, just begging God to take this from me. If you take this from me, I'll live how you want me to live. And I meant it. It was totally genuine, heartfelt. And then at 11 a.m. the next morning, I'm waiting for the liquor store to open. Just totally powerless, just totally powerless over the disease. My best intentions had no shot against this disease. The man that I wanted to be internally had no shot against this disease. So lots of SI, lots of ideation in my early mid-20s until I went to treatment. Lots of, planning how I was going to do it. Lots of, daily just morbid reflection on it'd be better if I was gone. And luckily, I'm still here, and I think a big part of that is how I was raised. I think there was some fear that if I did something like that, I would go to hell. That was part of it. It was like, well, you can't have sex with somebody, you can't kill yourself, and you can't kill anybody else, because those are the things that if you do, you go to hell. So I was just like, okay, well, I can't do that. I'm going to think about it all day, every day, but I'm not going to do it. So by the time I got to treatment, I was shooting heroin, 140 pounds, going through a divorce because she found out who I really was. And luckily for her, she got the hell away from me. And walked into the doors of treatment with nobody, with nothing, with no soul. I mean, just flickers of soul and heartbroken. Just done. I mean, I was done. I didn't fight treatment. I never fought against it. I was totally, and I'm grateful for that. I was totally done. I mean, from the first day of treatment, the language that was spoken in treatment was groundbreaking for me. I mean, it was the way that they told my story through their own stories, and the things they challenged you to do, like be honest. It's like, and like, it was so refreshing to have a solution for what was actually going on.
So tell me where, I have lots of questions. I always have lots of questions, and sometimes I don't ask them, and I don't know. I guess it doesn't matter how I ask them, right?
Yeah.
Tell me, I don't know if you want to, tell me where you ended up in treatment, because I think sometimes that's important. Where'd you go?
I went to Renaissance Ranch the summer of 2008, which is, it's funny, real quick, because I was in detox in Bountiful at Lakeview Hospital. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was very naive to treatment. I didn't know anybody that had gone to treatment. I had been to one AA meeting previously in Ogden, and I was like, going through withdrawals, and there was 5 guys in there like laughing and having a good time, and they were in their 60s, and I was like, this will never help me. Like this is like, this would never help me. So but I was in the hospital, and the ranch came by just kind of on a, hey, there's a guy here, come see him, like they do. And it's funny because the brochures for the ranch at that time were advertising the Park City house. They started in Park City. So it was horses, hiking, skiing. I was like, that place is cool, I want to go there. And they didn't tell me that it was in Bluffdale until we passed I-80 East. It's like, I thought we were going to Park City. And he's like, no, we moved to Bluffdale. So
that was a little bit of letdown.
a little bait and switch, but I went to the ranch.
And how did you end up, like, I guess the ranch came to you more than anything, and they kind of gave you their spill, and that was your option, right? You either go or you don't.
It's the only place I talk to. Like I said earlier, I am kind of a outside the box. Like I got some like drifter, so kind of pretty impressionable and a big people pleaser. And I liked this guy. His name was Shakes. Like he showed me a picture of his, before and after, and he was funny, and he. I liked him, so I was like, yeah, I'll go there. I didn't talk to anybody else. It was just kind of like, yeah, I'll go there. Come get me in a couple days.
Interesting. That's interesting how that happens, and those moments, those pivotal moments in our life that change everything. It sounds like that may have been one of your pivotal moments.
It was, I didn't. It definitely was. I think the days going into the hospital were pivotal, which was, a basic. It's not basic. It was amazing, but it was a kind of an internal moment where I remember I had 3 options. My mom, bless her heart, was letting me crash in her basement, and I was going through the withdrawals. I was probably a day and a half into them, and I was half awake and just had this thought like, you should take your life today. You should take your life today. There was kind of this adrenaline behind the thought this time, which was scary. There was kind of this energy and adrenaline behind the thought that was like, okay, this is a little more real this morning. It was immediately followed by a thought of, find a way to go get heroin, go get high. That was where I was at in my life. My best options were take your life, go get heroin. But there was a third thought that morning that followed. That I had never had, and I joke with a friend of mine, John Red, who you may know. I joke with him now because the third thought, which seems like you would have thought about before, or I would have thought about it before, was ask somebody to help you. After, gosh, more than a decade of suffering, this third thought was so profound but so simple, was like, ask somebody for help. It's like, okay, and that also felt like it came from a place outside of me. That thought was, it came from a place outside of me. There was truth bumps, we call them here at the ranch. There was goosebumps, truth bumps that accompanied that thought. Was like, whoever is up in the kitchen you can hear right now, go up there and ask them for help. And it was my older brother. My mom happened to be out of town, and so I went upstairs and I asked my older brother for help. So that was the profound moment that preceded another one with Shakes in the hospital. in choosing to go to the ranch. And then, since then, it just seems like if I'm aware enough and observing enough, these moments happen quite frequently.
So when you came upstairs to talk to your brother, what did you say? How did he react?
So I literally crawled into the kitchen. I was sick enough that I had a hard time walking. I was weak enough. I kind of crawled into the kitchen on the tile. I remember my nephew Jack was in the kitchen with my brother Landon, and Landon said, "Can you feed Jack some cereal?" I was in no condition to do that, but the people pleaser in me said, of course, So I got some cereal, and I laid down on the kitchen tile, and I started to try to feed Jack. I called him over, "Jack, have a seat. Let's eat some cereal." And I was laying down on the kitchen floor, and I couldn't. Well, it gets me emotional every time I say it, but I couldn't feed him. I was shaking too bad to get cereal to my 3-year-old nephew, and I looked up, and my brother Landon was just laser focused on me because he hadn't seen that. He had about a 20% knowledge of what I did when I wasn't around. He had no idea that it was like this, and so I just looked up at him, and he was emotional, and I was emotional, and he said, "Bryan, do you need some help?" And I said, "Yeah, man, I need some help. I don't know how to get it or where I need to go, but he drove me to the hospital." I think that was the next step, was like, well, let's just go to the hospital and see what we can do for you. So,
Because he was learning your story, but he's also not familiar with addiction, recovery, none of that stuff, right? So it's not pick a center, where's detox, call somebody. It's just ER. This is where you went.
yeah, my family was very naive to the treatment realm, even though, I have extended family that were definite alcoholics, and that particular brother is in recovery, but yeah, we were very naive to the next steps as far as how to get help.
He's in recovery since then, or he was in recovery at the time?
Since then, yeah.
Since then.
Well, the whole my immediate family's all in. My parents divorced when I was in high school. I got an amazing stepfather. The immediate family's kind of all in on it, and some of the extended family. I think when it comes to aunts, uncles, cousins, kind of watching from the peripheral or from the outside, it's some of them are they don't quite know how to talk about it or which is understandable. I mean, it is kind of a strange language to speak, and you can't really force it down anybody's throat, nor would you want to. Although I believe that everybody could benefit from speaking the language of recovery. It's something, as you guys know, that's pretty intimate, personal. So yeah, the dinner table, the trips we go on together, we're very transparent as an immediate family with siblings and our spouses, and it's a big part of our family. But we still have moments where I feel and believe that we get stuffy. Our feelings get stuffed. We get guarded. We're not as vulnerable. We play the part, 2 thumbs up, like it's all good. I think just that's human nature to kind of resort back to that. but then there's usually somebody that can, my little sister is one that has been to family groups, Al-Anon. She's one that will say something to kind of cut through the fog of apathy or laziness when it comes to where we need to be as a family. Yeah.
Hey, good for her. I know when you get in the habit of that kind of inauthenticity and secrecy and all that kind of stuff, just having somebody who shoots straight really goes a long way. And that helps with the connection, right? It's easy to go back to, toughness and silence and all that kind of garbage. And it's interesting that you mentioned the language of recovery and that it's personal, but there's also this like openness, right? Where once you kind of get to that point and realize the value of being open, it almost turns the other way, right? I've got a really good friend who went through rehab maybe 10 years before I knew him, and all the time in the first probably year that we knew each other, the I love yous and a text about, hey, here's how much we appreciate, your friendship and the friendship that our kids have with your kids and that kind of thing. And even as a person who like understands that language and is familiar with it, it's still uncomfortable. It's still super uncomfortable, right? Because it's just different than the way, I think a lot of us culturally are we mirror, right, what we see, and you don't see that a lot. So I think it's amazing. I think as a society, we're in kind of an amazing time as far as emotional intelligence and transparency and just people being willing to talk about mental illness and all that other kind of stuff. Combine that with a family who's not necessarily trained on emotional skills and communication, and a religion who's definitely not. It all gets messy, right? So how do you kind of take that story and now in the work that you're doing at Renaissance Ranch, how do you turn that into successes for other people?
Well, we do exactly that. I think the ranch is somewhere where we try to, incorporate. We have five values that we try to live by. We're a big 12-step facility. We're a men's house, so we're gender specific. And the first thing that happens when a guy walks in the door is he gets 25 hugs in a row. And they're always like, especially the guys that come from jail, they're like, oh no, we don't. No. We're not hugging. And it's like, oh, well, you are here. If you want to be here, we're going to do that. And so our approach here is not abrasive, but direct. We don't tiptoe around the disease. We confront things quickly and directly with love. Never in anybody's face. I mean, obviously we're appropriate with our confrontation, but we're going to challenge guys to be vulnerable. We're going to challenge guys to tell the truth. We believe that you can be as free as you are honest. If you can clear all of the baggage you've been carrying and all the darkness in the soul that you've been carrying, if you can be courageously honest and own your past, everything, all of it, then you got a shot to be free and to feel some peace again and start to find who you truly are again. And so we definitely speak the language here as a group of men, which I think is amazing. I think we talk about kind of the how can I say that, the manly kind of, stand up and take care of your problems and you're a man, be a man, don't snitch and handle your stuff and be strong. And, we counter that aggressively. We're going to cry, we're going to hug, we're going to, we're going to laugh, we're going to tell the truth, we're going to show up on time, we're going to make our beds every morning. We're going to do it together. And I think a big thing that we do here that I love because it saved my life was we're going to stay tethered beyond treatment. We're going to stay connected in the community, far beyond treatment. We want that tether to be with each man that comes in here, and also their family, with our family programming, and I think we've done that. I think the founders of Renaissance, they started that, kind of this culture of tethering and staying connected well beyond treatment, which is huge. I mean, I still talk to guys I lived here with regularly. Our alumni's over. I think there's been over 1,200 guys come through the ranch since it was founded, and so the alumni network is pretty massive. There's not 1,200 guys that are sober. We know that, but I think we do all right here with giving the message of recovery.
I'm curious, Bryan, you talked about, again, back to that language of treatment and the ability to be honest and vulnerable. And that's something that, I don't think, like Kurt said, it's not modeled for us. It's not something that we see, but I know that as we do our healing work, that we start to model those behaviors. And I'm curious how what you've learned in treatment has affected your relationship with, I'm assuming, I'm making an assumption that you have kids.
I do. I have 3 amazing kids, Porter, Logan, and Ryan, 2 boys and a little girl, 8, 6, and 3. An amazing wife, Rebecca. She's from the South. She's also one that will say something at just the right moment. She's a leader. She's extremely brave. She's courageous, and she's a huge blessing in my life, to put up with me.
So how does your recovery, how does that affect the relationships that you have with your kids, and how are you modeling for them so that you can address some of the things you dealt with as a kid?
Yeah, that is something that I'm still trying to, on a daily basis, improve. Being a dad is something in recovery, because I do the same kind of routine, and I'll add to it as far as my personal recovery foundation that I did from when I started. So the morning routines, my prayer meditation, nightly inventory, reaching out to a couple brothers every day, try to get into some service, all of that, and I'll add stuff to it as I go. But having kids and acting the right way in the moment is something that I still struggle with. I think I'm a good dad, but that's one thing at night when I'm closing my eyes, laying in bed, kind of taking a personal inventory, that it's like, man, I could have done better with my kids today. So I still deal with some personal shame stuff with my kids too. It's like, I didn't do that right, or I should have reacted differently to that, or I should have given more time to Porter today, or there's some of that. But I think, gosh, I'm so grateful for the language of recovery to be vulnerable. It's okay to cry. Please tell the truth, even if you think you're going to get in trouble. It's way more important to be honest with mom and dad than cover it up and be dishonest about it. So I think the transparency, the directness, and the vulnerability is something that recovery taught me that I hope will go a long way. Talk to us about what's going on. Why are you sad? It's okay to be sad. Talk to us. What's going on? You're angry. It's okay to be angry. That's a normal emotion. Why are you angry? Instead of, don't be angry. Mm-hmm. Be happy. Be grateful. Those are things that I kind of grew up with at no fault for who I grew up around. But it was like, don't be sad. Don't be angry. Don't be upset. be happy. Life is good. Be happy. God wants you to be happy. It's like, well, yeah, I believe that, but I think he also gave me some emotions. So I think that will help with our kids. I see that help with our kids. I know that helps with our kids, to just be authentic. And but I can tell you, when they are dishonest about something, I take it personal.
That works out really well then, I expect.
It's like it's my fault. I didn't do something. So yeah, but it's all good.
Well, I think it goes back to your comment that, everybody could benefit from the principles of recovery, because we're all going to come across challenges, and it may not be addiction, but it's going to be something. I don't think any of us come through this life unscathed. And I also believe that when you do your work, that it changes who you are at the very core, and your kids can't help but be affected in positive ways by that. So I think it's powerful, and I don't know of any parent that doesn't do some of the same things, ask the same questions you do, and worry that we're not doing good enough. That's a normal, good parent approach. Is I think I screwed up today, and I better fix it, better do a little bit better tomorrow, kind of an approach, and to be aware that we can do better, right?
Yeah, and that for me, that's all step stuff from the 12 steps that I learned. That I believe in. It's like, that's a blueprint that if I follow it, I can't screw it up too bad. And that's what I needed. I needed some pretty foundational, like really black and white. Here's the 12 steps. Here's what they say. Because I just needed that. And so I think self-awareness and reduction of ego, as much as possible. And I think that's what the steps are for, to be self-aware and learn about yourself and dig into the pain. I think pain is one of my greatest teachers now, and I used to run from it like the plague. It's like I do not want to feel uncomfortable or in pain. And gosh, pain's probably my best teacher.
Oh, what an incredible story, and it just warms my heart to hear the journey that you've been on. I have one more question that I'm really curious about. You kind of started your story by talking about your religious background, your upbringing, and the role that played, and some of the values that were there. What does that relationship with your higher power look like now, and how has it transformed?
It's been beautiful. So I went from, but when I got to the ranch, I presented as an atheist. It was all an ego thing. I wanted the attention, and I wanted to rebel against how I was brought up, because I think it made me feel better about all the things that I had done. So I was an atheist when I walked through the doors. That changed 2 days into treatment, where I knew that wasn't the case. And so it's kind of been this journey, first back to spirituality. And I found that through meditation, and I found that through nature, up in the canyons, walking amongst the trees where the world's far away. That's where I started to kind of feel God in my life again, both in meditation, some Eastern practices, nature, and I still have that, but it's grown. I was disfellowshipped from the church, and it was a positive thing at the time. It was part of my recovery process, actually recommended by a Harley Davidson AA sponsor that's not LDS. Was like, you need to do that. I feel like you need to do that just to kind of get right in that realm of your life. And so I did, and he was right. It freed me up a lot. But it wasn't a shame thing. I felt like it was a big positive step when I did that. And then it took me a few years, just kind of trying different stuff. I didn't try any other religions, but like I'm a big believer in meditation. I do it every morning. A big prayer guy, but I think meditation for me is more powerful than prayer. I had another mentor tell me that God was tired of listening to me, so I that I needed to listen to Him, and so I like that. But I do talk to God now. It's just a little bit different, but I reactivated a few years back, maybe 5 or 6 years back, into the religion of my youth, and I had to, and still have to, be careful that it's not a heady kind of intellectual, proving grounds of what's exactly true and what's exactly not true. For me, I listen to my heart. And when I'm active and engaged in something like that, I feel better. It's a very simple, like, I feel more peace, and I do have to steer away from the intellectual debates and conversations. And, I've been down that road, and it's pretty dark, and it doesn't serve me. So simplicity serves me. Putting one foot in front of the other and trusting my heart, rather than listening to my head. So I'm back. I'm a primary teacher. I teach 4-year-olds.
That's beautiful, right? That's the perfect place to be.
And so my amazing wife was baptized last year, and that was all her thing. Like, she is her own person. I never wanted to. I never wanted to be somebody that pushed anything on her, or even tried to offer anything to her. And we set that boundary early on in our relationship. And it's funny because the missionaries showed up like they do. And I had shooed them away for her before, kind of protected her, like, we're okay here. And so I kind of was doing that again last year when they showed up. And I was like, we're okay here. And Rebecca came around the corner, and she was like, I invited them over. Like, can you just go into the other room? Like, get out of the way, And so I was able to kind of watch her find a form of spirituality that was genuine, and so that was cool. That's where we're at now with kind of that religious path. Is it's not my entire life. It's not my entire practice of spirituality. It's just part of it, and it's an asset to my personal recovery, but it's definitely not all of it. AA is I have a home group and a sponsor, and I have sponsees, and I think my foundation is built on a lot of different modalities, and I have a therapist, and I need my therapist, and you're like, yeah, obviously we know you need your therapist, but
No, we all need our therapist. I'm just saying, I love my therapy.
Everybody does. You've mentioned a few times that you're a people pleaser.
yeah.
What have you learned about that? Do you have kind of triggers that you learn to catch on that, of how to take care of yourself and make sure you're not overextending yourself? And
Yeah, I think I've made progress with it. I don't know how much or how little. I mean, I think I'm aware of it more than I used to be pre-treatment. The guys here in treatment helped me out to identify that the most. It's like, now tell us how you really feel about that, because it doesn't seem authentic that what you're saying isn't matching your affect. And so I started to learn there about how to speak my truth, be honest about how I really felt about saying yes to that task, or doing this thing, or volunteering for this thing at work, or volunteering for something in the neighborhood, or because of fear of not being liked or not being validated, or like, I can do that. I sign up for a lot, and it still burns me. I still sign up for more than I probably should, especially at work. When I have have a team that is fully capable of handling it. I still will overexert myself, and so I think trust is a part of that. But yeah, people pleasing is something that's very much still part of my day-to-day stuff. So it's a work in progress.
I relate to that. I always have to step back and go, why am I doing that? Like, what am I just doing that because I want someone to like me? Like, you got to pay attention to that. So I think those of us that are people pleasers, it seems like it's ingrained, and it's like, how do you stop being that or doing that, right? Because I think it also kind of ties, for me anyway, with service, that it's part of serving other people, and there's a line between it, but it's really fine and hard to distinguish sometimes. So I relate.
Yeah, it's tough. I do set boundaries better than I ever have, but I'm still not great at it. I do it a lot in the neighborhood. We have I live in Caseville. We have an awesome neighborhood. My job, one of the things where I can see progress is, as you guys know, like, my job takes a lot of energy, a lot of time throughout the week. And so there's things within my specific religion, and I don't know how you guys are affiliated with religion, and that's okay, but just for conversation purposes, like, I get asked to do stuff on Saturday, Sunday. Hey, can you go meet with this family? Hey, can you, and I say no a lot in my neighborhood, and I feel guilty about it. Mm-hmm. But I think it's the right thing to do. In the moment, usually it's like, you know what, I've been away from my kids a lot this week. I've been away from the wife a lot this week. I don't have the time and energy to do that. And I still feel like this, like, they're going to think I'm a jerk, and I know I'm not a jerk, but that's kind of that people-pleasing thing that, it's like, gosh, should I be doing all of that stuff? Am I doing something wrong by not doing it? Is it, so I still have some of that internal conflict with setting boundaries and the aftermath of the post-boundary that you set, it's like, gosh.
Well, I love that you bring that up, because I can imagine you're not the only person with that question, right? And those of us who overextend ourselves sometimes say yes way too many times, and it has to be okay to say no. That's not going to work for my schedule. That doesn't work for my family, and they got to come first on this. So I always admire people who can set those really good boundaries and can distinguish between the most important things and other things that are really important, but just can't take priority, right? But it's tough. Mm-hmm. And I love that you talk about that and the ongoing struggle with that, because it's real.
Yeah, it is real. There's struggles for everybody if they're a human being on the planet. Mm-hmm. Struggles are very real every day. And that's something that is okay to talk about and admit. And when people do talk about it, it's like a celebration. It's the bonds formed in those conversations that are authentic and real, those last, and those are lasting. And that's what I love. That's what I love the most about recovery is, the mentors that I have, and the bonds that have been created, and the friendships, and seeing the newcomers in a place of total transparency and pain. And it's like when I meet with families, when they're checking in, I smile a lot, and I feel like this enthusiastic celebration, like, I am so pumped for you, and they're looking at me like, you are crazy, dude. This is not a good day, but from my side, and in my opinion, it's one of the best days of their life. So I'm so pumped for them.
Well, that's an ironic thing that happens, because they really are at rock bottom, right? Like, that's got to be a turning point where, if you looked at it like a stock ticker, it's got to be just the very bottom, right? But that from here it goes up, right? So even though it's going to be work, and even though it's going to be hard, and there's going to be, effort and turmoil and all that kind of stuff, the ticker goes up from here, right? And so as long as they, show up and that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
that I could see how that's a weird juxtaposition of them coming in at wit's end and you kind of being welcome.
Yeah.
You're in the right place, right? This is where you get the tools to have a new life. So
Well,
that's
and
quirky.
I imagine that stems back to the fact that your introduction to treatment was also life-saving for you, because your propensity to to take your own life was increasing, and it was getting more difficult and more difficult. So I would imagine, at least as I would imagine it would be for me, is that I would celebrate that life that's coming through the door, that I know we might save them, right? That might be somebody that doesn't end up dead because they couldn't get help. And so I think that there's a lot to celebrate there. One of the other things, I love your story, Bryan. I love the change and the journey and your willingness to be authentic and vulnerable. And I also really appreciated the way you talked about the distinction between your religious upbringing and your spirituality. I think that most people, or lots of people still link those together, and I think they are absolutely different things. The group that you're part of and your relationship with your higher power are two very different things in my book anyway. And I think you kind of explained that and talked about that, which I think is really great. I love that you're willing to come on and share these things with people. And if we've got people that are listening, and they certainly will be, and they'll want to get a hold of you or talk to you, how can they do that?
Sure. You can email me. It's my first name, Bryan, with a Y, at renaissanceranch.com. It's kind of a long, annoying email, but I am on the social medias, Facebook, Instagram, even on Twitter. Renaissance Ranch, Instagram, Facebook, you can message there, and I'm the one that will field those, kind of behind the brand. So would love and be thrilled to talk to anybody that feels like they want to reach out. So
nice. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for being
It's been
on.
fun. Awesome to meet you guys.